Tick-tock, time to rock. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone who's watching from all over the world. Hey, we got Daughter of the Most High with we're proud of that, we're proud of that, we're proud of that. Should that be my intro music?
Yeah, you need some sort of like countdown and intro music.
What's the purpose of that? Is it just because people need time to log on? Like what's the purpose of the intro music?
Well, when you go live, like YouTube just starts, the moment you go live, YouTube starts like really pumping it out to your followers and say, hey, someone's live. So it gives it time for people to come in.
You want to give them a few seconds before.
Yep. I might get a longer countdown, like a 2-minute one. I'm still looking at that.
You know, it'd be funny, like start your live stream and say all the most important stuff in like the first 60 seconds. Just like rapid fire, and then like the rest of the live stream is totally boring and pointless, and then no one caught it. That'd be pretty funny.
Oh yeah, that'd be hilarious.
That would be classic D Wood style. Hey everyone, we got a show for you here. I'm live with Inspiring Philosophy because AP doesn't know anything about religion because he's an agnostic. But no, because IP, you've been making videos on this stuff for a while, and you've read super important books like Dominion and so on. And guys, I was watching a discussion with Bill Maher and Jordan Peterson, and Bill Maher never ever seems to grow out of certain views that were popular back in the day.
Mm-hmm. And I'm also gonna. Just so you know, I'm going to be doing a bunch more videos on this whole topic next year. I've got videos planned like how Christianity ended slavery, how Christianity rescued children, how Christianity created human rights, how Christianity spread literacy and education, how Christianity created science. So I got a whole bunch of videos planned on all the good Christianity has done because I'm so sick and tired of this, what I call it atheist mythology, which part of that is, part of that mythos is one, Jesus didn't exist, but also the Dark Ages were a thing, and Christianity was at war with science and tried to hold back education and growth, and it's all nonsense. So I'm going to do a whole bunch of videos debunking that next year.
Yeah, and especially it's so weird. It's like Bill Maher is giving like the standard atheist. It's funny. Mark here just said that's because Bill is scripted clown. It's weird because I like a lot of like Bill Maher. Yeah. Me and AP were just talking about this in the sense that what I like about Bill Maher is he'll tell you what he thinks, even if it's unpopular, even if he's going to be blasted for it. Same with Sam Harris. I can think that Sam Harris is spouting a bunch of idiotic nonsense, but Sam Harris will just look, here's what I think. And I don't care if like everyone in front of me is going to blast me for it or insult me for it. I'm just going to tell you what I think. So that's cool. And Bill Maher has always been, he's been far more commonsensical on the idea that not all religions are the same. So even if you think religion in general is a problem, you can acknowledge, hey, here's one in particular that I really got a problem with because it really wants to chop my head off. So he's been better than a lot of people in his position would have been. So hats off to him for that. But the objections that he raises against Christianity and the Bible, it sounds like something out of from the 1970s before everyone responded to this, before tons of people wrote books on these issues, even non-Christians writing books on these issues. And so in other words, I don't know what he would say on like the issue of science, but I'm guessing if you brought up science, it would be like, well, look at Galileo and they just had a different idea. So they all persecute. I can guarantee that's what he would say without even asking.
I just had an atheist historian on my channel. I think like last week. Name is Tony Christie. We covered the whole Galileo affair. He's an atheist. He's like, the church wasn't persecuting Galileo for doing science. They were going after him because he insulted the Pope, which was his patron, and this was a whole political affair. He also was told he cannot teach heliocentrism as a fact. He could teach it as a hypothesis, but not a fact. And then he tried to support it with really dumb arguments, like he thought the tides were somehow evidence of heliocentrism, and he scolded Kepler for saying that the moon controlled the tides. He said that was occultic. Like, so he got a lot of really. He was not like making really good arguments in his book, the dialogue. Forget the full name of it, but it's a whole myth. So if people want to check that out, that's just another myth that we hear all the time.
And he had I think it was the Dominicans he had a problem with, and the Jesuits were on his side, and these guys were like vying for scholarly authority and so on. And so he's caught right in the middle of things. And it's the Pope is being called out for not cracking down enough on the Protestant Reformation. Galileo's he was a Catholic, but he's basically saying to the theologians, you guys mind your own business. I can interpret this how I want, which sounded kind of Protestant-ish to them. And so they're like, hey, you need to get this in check before this Protestant stuff takes off over here. And the Pope was still defending Galileo. Galileo goes to him and says, hey, you mind if I publish this book? And he says, sure, just as long as you include it in your book that these theories that we're tossing back and forth could be wrong. There could be some other explanation that may be the correct one, because, our knowledge is limited. So something else may be correct here, which the Pope turned out to be correct, because Galileo's view isn't completely correct. And
well, hold on. There's more there. Galileo, the book he published, was completely wrong in so many ways. He said in the book, we know the tides happen at the same time every day. And he was using this argument, like if you swish like a bowl of water around, the water's going to move up and down, and that's evidence that the Earth goes around the Earth. It's not being controlled by the moons; it's the Earth moving around the sun, which is controlling the tides. But everyone who's been to the beach knows the tides don't happen at the same time every day, and they follow the phases of the moon. He said in the book that comets are only sublunar, so they only exist below the orbit of the moon, which was also wrong. So he made a lot of really bad arguments in that book. It wasn't cutting edge science of the day. There's a lot of mythology about him.
Yeah, and so a lot of the objections, and people don't get this with Copernicus and so on, it's the concern back then was you would sound like an idiot to people. If you start saying, hey, the Earth that we're on right now feels like I'm really stable, is spinning really, really rapid. So we're actually moving really, really fast right now, and we're hurling around the sun and stuff. It's like, okay, you better come up with some good arguments to defend that, because that sounds idiotic. Now, eventually you come up with good arguments for it. If you don't have the good arguments, you sound insane. And so basically back then it's just, okay, the math works out a bit better. If you look at the universe this way, the math works out a bit better for our measurements. And that's your main argument.
The physics at the time of Galileo wasn't on his side. And also he was holding to the Copernican model, not a Keplerian model. So he rejected Kepler's work, and Kepler was right. Kepler said the planets went around the sun in ellipticals. Okay. He was right. Copernicus and Galileo said they went around the sun in perfect circles. There was no known physics, and there still is no known physics to explain how that could be possible. The church basically went to Galileo and said, you can't prove your hypothesis. This is crap. And so they just said, you're just absolutely wrong.
They gave him the opportunity. They said, hey, come and defend this. Come and show that you've got some evidence of that. Other than that, don't run around like you're proving this. And then on top of all that, I mentioned that he goes to the Pope. He goes to the Pope and says, hey, can I publish my book on this? And the Pope says, yeah. Just include this. Just include this, that there may be something else that actually we haven't even thought of that is the correct response. So Galileo puts the book out, and he does include that, but he puts it in the mouth of Simplicio, who's the idiot. Right? He has an idiot say what the Pope is saying after the Pope, who'd been his friend for a long time and was defending him. So he puts what the Pope requested in the mouth of the idiot. And then the Pope gets informed that he had signed a document many years earlier saying he would not teach this as fact, and so on. And then the Pope says, oh, he tricked me. So he calls me an idiot in his book, and he used me to circumvent this contract that he'd signed. Oh, yeah. This guy's in trouble. The Inquisition at that time was going to let Galileo off with a slap on the wrist. They just said, okay, just say you inadvertently forgot about what you'd said about not teaching this fact. Just say you inadvertently, and then we'll let you slide. By that time, the Pope is like, nope. You're doing more to this guy than that. And so they put him on house arrest. And so somehow in the minds of people, that becomes the standard model for the relationship between religion and science, this eternal conflict, this eternal warfare between science and religion. Wild stuff. And my real issue with these guys is, like the Bill Maher types and the new atheists and so on, Not so much with like the traditional atheists who were much more sane, and there are plenty around still. But the aggressive atheists, it's just that they're like constantly bragging that they're the champions of reason and logic and science and so on. And you look, and it's all, you guys have no clue what you're talking about. Everything you say is a misrepresentation. You're committing logical fallacies left and right. You don't know the history of science. You don't know anything you're talking about. And you're just running your mouth constantly, bragging about being the champions of reason and science and so on. And it's just, I don't know, it's so stupid. Yeah, me and AP went through that. You responded to that, right? The thinking atheist the other day when he tried to refute he made fun of the cosmological argument. And he starts off with a premise that I've never seen any theist use in the cosmological
Everything
argument.
has a cause. What are you talking?
He said creator. He even went creator. He didn't go cause.
God.
Yeah, he said, the cosmological argument starts off, everything has a creator. But then they say, God doesn't have a creator. Ha ha, I've refuted you. And I pointed out to AP that, like, I mean, if it was like an 11-year-old atheist who had 2 followers, I would still think, gosh, you need to learn how to think. It's a popular atheist. This is a popular atheist.
Dude, he says a lot of really dumb stuff, and he never takes correction. Every year he says the same thing. Christmas is a pagan holiday. Christmas is a pagan holiday. And he gets refuted on that every year. And then every year we got to debunk him again. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what Bill Maher seems like to me. And guys, I don't really care if you're locked into like the 1970s or 1980s or the early 2000s at best with we smart and you all dumb, and that you've never grown out of that. It's that, how do you then go on? We're the smart ones and everyone else is dumb. So you could say 10 things. You could say 10 things about the Bible, 10 things about science, and you'd be wrong every time. And it will never cross your mind that you are not the champion of logic and reason and science that you think you are. And you'll never stop pointing to everyone else. Everyone else is the dumb ones, and they're the dumb ones that misrepresent everything because they're stupid, and they're the ones who commit fallacies, not me. My goodness, man, what is this? What has the world become? Anyway, that's what goes on with Bill Maher. Like him in a lot of ways. His view. I'll even still occasionally see him spouting Jesus myther stuff, like Jesus never existed.
Yeah, how do I get on his podcast here that he's doing with Jordan Peterson? I'd love to go on there and talk.
Matter of fact, it's even in this clip we're about to watch. He doesn't give the full theory and stuff, but he's like, Paul doesn't know anything. He thinks Jesus is this heavenly figure and there's no evidence that he even existed. It's like, dude, what? This is not 1970, dude. Anyway.
Yeah, he's not read the Bible.
He's pretty darn clueless. All right, let's take these first couple super chats and then we'll jump right into this video with our good friend Bill Maher talking to Jordan Peterson. AP looks different. Yep. He looks significantly less
upgraded.
Less Turkish. Apostate of Allah says, I hear Ali Dawah turned his channel into basically corn with women showing their hair flowing and necks out for all to see.
Necks? Not necks. Oh, the inhumanity.
Yeah, it's funny. He used to blur out women, and now he's got like he'll put any hot blonde with blue eyes. He'll put her right on his channel and stuff like that, and show for all the world to see and lust after. Weird. So I don't know how much you've been following it, but all the Dawah channels now are becoming like gossip channels. Like, did you hear what someone said about such and such and this thing? What is this? And they're all doing that. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, we're still doing apologetics. We're still trying to get people to convert to Christianity, and they're just trying to make money. I feel like at this point, like, what are you guys doing? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's an ongoing problem of a lot of these guys really seem like narcissists. And so now is a really good time for a narcissist to become a popular da'i because people are in a panic about the avalanche of apostasy. So they're all worried. So if you come forward and say, I'm the new champion who's going to save you from your kids from leaving Islam, then you'll get very popular very, very quickly. And so you get a bunch of attention. But over time, as you're doing your dawah, you find out, if I just start talking about gossip and I put the blonde hair, blue-eyed girl all over my channel, then they finds out that it's an easier way to get attention. You get more attention, and so
I do so many videos that I'm not going to get attention on. I did a 10-part series refuting the documentary hypothesis. Like, I did that because there's going to be some kid somewhere who's going to go be in college. He's going to hear this and he's going to panic and he's going to start looking for answers. And hopefully my series comes up. But I mean, like, I'm not doing videos because I'm like trying to spread gossip for views. I'm trying to actually help people. But apparently that's not what they're doing.
Yeah, this is wild stuff. Talk on the Trinity sent a video my way on biblical feed from Biblical Unitarian. Unitarian as in rejecting the Trinitarian theology. Fascinating, rejecting Christ as God, but calling oneself Christian. That is a bit weird. And from Giovanni, David, fire. David, fire.
Maybe he says you're going to hell. David's on fire or something.
What are you saying? You're saying I'm going to hell, Giovanni? All right, let's go ahead and jump into the video. So this is Jordan Peterson and Bill Maher. I started right after. It's kind of funny. I thought about leaving this in just because it's funny to me. Right before this clip, Bill Maher is complaining about like history classes and stuff trying to do away with George Washington because he owned slaves, right? Like, and then we just have to get rid of George Washington because he owned slaves and stuff. And it's like, guys, why don't you understand? And then they go into the topic of religion. He's like, no, I just throw it all out. I just throw it all out because of slavery. And it's like, wait a minute, dude, how do you have the same sort of mindset that that the people you're criticizing have. All right, guys, well, let's jump into a bit of, hang on one second. Max keeps posting, can you tell David and Michael to do a debunking of Hinduism and Buddhism? I seriously doubt that I'll be doing a debunking of Hinduism or Buddhism. I don't normally talk about stuff unless I've studied it somewhat, and I've kind of got enough on my plate dealing with the things I deal with. So I can't imagine a scenario where I'm going to study Buddhism and Hinduism enough to post responses refuting them. I can't speak for IP. IP, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if I see some stuff, I've done some stuff on Krishna in the past, but that's refuting Jesus mythicists, but that pissed off all the Hindus. Like, so, I mean, I know a little bit about Krishna and like when some of their sources like the Gita were written, but I mean, like beyond that, I don't know that much.
Yeah. And I mean, I took classes on this because when I was an undergraduate in philosophy, it was philosophy with an emphasis in religious studies. So I took classes on, Eastern religions and things like that, but it's not, I don't know. I don't like talking about things that I don't study a lot, and to study a lot, I have to have a certain concern about them. So, I mean, I would really assume that Christians from that area would be more effective at responding to it. You know what I mean? Like Christians who are over there, where it's more of a, because that's sort of a thing is in apologetics is Christians keep waiting until something is right in their face, right? Like they're not concerned about cults until the cult is knocking at your door. Then suddenly, oh, okay, now we need to be concerned about this. Christians aren't concerned about atheism until their kids go away to college and their kids come home atheists and so on. Then they get concerned about this. Christians aren't concerned about Islam until there's just all these terrorist attacks and so on. And so that's kind of human nature. You're more concerned with what's right in front of you. And I kind of got a lot of Islam and stuff right in my face right now. And
look, Hindus
aren't the ones who are threatening to slaughter me in the name of Krishna or anything. Yeah,
I'd say I'm defending Christianity. If Jesus rose from the dead, Hinduism is just false. So I mean, like that's just sort of like a win all in my view. If you can show Jesus rose from the dead, I mean Christianity is true. What now? So that's the route I tend to take.
Abraham Harp said, "Where's Ali Dawa? He's loading up his next clip of some blonde-haired, blue-eyed chick for his gossip channel. Thoughts on Clement of Rome having supposedly Unitarian beliefs?"
No, he did not.
In your face. Answering
Check
LDS.
So the second letter of Clement is very clearly not Unitarian. It says Jesus is God, but some don't attribute that to the Clement. Fine, whatever. The first letter, it's not talking about this kind of stuff. He doesn't make Unitarian or Trinitarian claims because he's talking about other issues. So it's arguing from silence. We don't. And again, you can look at places like the Didache. The Didache, for example, is contemporary with Clement, and it says it changes the liturgical formula Hosanna to the Son of David. It changes that to Hosanna to the God of David. So it explicitly calls Jesus is God. That's in the first century.
Indeed. People are saying, wait, isn't AP Ali Dawa?
Yeah. ChatGPT says he
Yeah.
is.
I forgot about that. That's funny. That was classic. Let's see. Two more real quick. Sorry, David. I was going to use 2 fire emojis, but they didn't turn into a bigger flame emoji. So he used the David with the fire emoji. I wanted to make 2, but they wouldn't turn into one bigger one. So sorry, Muhammad Hijab. You're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. And Apostate of Allah says, I made a satire video on the William Lane Craig versus Muhammad Hijab debate. If you're interested, I played a Muslim woman. It was fun to make. Yes, Apostate of Allah. We will check that out in one of our shows this weekend. That'll be, I don't know. It's always fun stuff to watch. And then uninspiring philosophy, IP, have you intellectually molested David? What the heck is going on with your fans coming over here, man? Uninspiring philosophy. Hey, when you eventually hit 1 million subscribers, you should change your name to awe-inspiring philosophy.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Awe-inspiring philosophy. All right, guys, let's get into this clip. Again, right before this, Bill Maher is complaining about George Washington being scrubbed from history curricula because of slavery.
Look, I mean, I'm in a different place than I was in the 70s. I've been an atheist, and I felt like I feel like you're a lapsed atheist. I feel like it's a paradox that someone of your extraordinary intellectual abilities is trying to reanimate this dead hooker called religion. And
I like it because Jordan Peterson is going, It's like, you're a lapsed atheist. You go, And I find it weird that you're trying to reanimate this dead hooker that is religion. And Jordan Peterson goes,
bring it back to life in some way or find what's useful in it. Why try to take these?
Because you get false substitutes emerge.
I know what that was. I mean.
Yeah.
Did you catch that? He goes, I don't know what that means.
You do get false substitutes. He's
Yeah,
absolutely right.
you definitely do. Let me back up, guys, because that's an important point. It's not just that it's an important point. It's important that he doesn't understand what Jordan Peterson is saying right now. So Bill Maher is saying, and this is like classic, like Hollywood, right? Like, you're out of touch with the real world. So you're living in your little bubble. It reminds me of, like, I've said this about like Dawkins and co. when they came up with the idea of let's be more aggressive with atheism and go around and we'll convert the world to atheism and so on. From their perspective and their little bubble, in their ivory towers of Oxford and so on, they're looking around going, but look, I'm an atheist and he's an atheist and he's an atheist. And we're told that we need religion for these great things in the world. But look, if we all became atheists, we'd all just be like us. So let's all become atheists and just be like us. And they do not understand. You weren't just born like this, and like all other human beings are just going to be exactly like you. If you just if they develop without religion, they're all going to be these enlightened atheists. It's not going to happen. You don't understand how the world works. You live in a little bubble, and you don't get it. And you think everyone thinks like you, and they don't.
Yeah, research shows, that when religion declines, people start creating political religions. So you start worshiping like a political ideology. And a lot of atheists are far more politically involved than Christians are. So like what happens is they just replace religion with politics, and that becomes the new God, the new religion. And people get then that's why we're seeing politics get so polarized right now, because that becomes the new sacred. And now they're defending the sacred. It's no longer that I'm just disagreeing with George Bush. It's that Trump is Hitler or Harris is Stalin. And if they get in charge, this is going to be over. It's going to be the most important election of our lives. This wasn't what was going on in the early 90s when it was like Bush versus Clinton. But this is what we see. As religiosity declines, it's replaced by political religiosity, which is far more deadly.
And yeah, matter of fact, there are articles like this where you can look at articles from like 2020 and stuff, and it'll be like, recent explosion in practice of witchcraft among young people. It's like, wait, I thought as young people abandoned religion, they were going to become a bunch of enlightened atheists, and they're going to be super scientific. Anyway, that's the main delusion. I posted a video a while back where it's just this little clip of Elon Musk where this is pointed out to him that Dawkins and co. really thought that if people abandon Christianity, they're going to become these enlightened atheists, and you're going to get this scientific utopia. And Elon just didn't work out like that. And so it's interesting that it was almost on the level of like a scientific hypothesis that if we do this, all this great stuff is going to happen. Okay, you're 20 years into it now, over 20 years into it now of rapidly expanding atheism. How has the world improved because of this rapidly expanding atheism in any way? Keep in mind, I'm not talking about contributions to the world by particular atheists or something. I'm talking about this aggressive mutation of atheism that wants to convert the entire world to atheism and thinks you're getting a scientific utopia. How has the world become better? How has it become more scientific? How have people been brought closer together and less divisive? How? Name a way. I can't. In other words, you made a prediction about what was going to happen. Your prediction has been massively disconfirmed. If you are at all scientific at this point, you should be rethinking your position. And
Right.
if you just keep going, well, okay, all we're getting is a bunch of disasters by this, but let's keep going anyway. Okay, now you're saying that now you're telling me you're operating on the kind of faith that you ridicule.
Mm-hmm.
Weird stuff. Yeah. All right. But Bill Maher does not understand what Jordan Peterson is talking about when he says that if you start getting rid of religion, you're going to get something's going to come in and replace it. False substitutes.
To take these,
Because you get false substitutes emerge.
I know what does that mean?
Well, imagine that your systems of ideas, imagine that they're either unified or not unified. Those are basically the options, right? And if they are unified, there's something under which they have to be unified. And if they're not unified, then they're in conflict, and that's not good. That makes you anxious. It makes you hopeless. It breeds social discord.
Ideas are in conflict, you're saying?
Yes.
But ideas are always in conflict.
But if they're in conflict too much, people go to war and they fall apart.
Well,
right? I mean, look, you want diversity and you want difference in opinion because you want to keep things churning. But
what has made people go to war more than anything? Belief in who's the real God. I mean,
Okay. No.
Wasn't there a study on this of like someone who went through like all the causes of wars and stuff in history?
Oh,
like
I got more than that.
It's like a tiny fraction are actually religion based.
So Vox Day went through Encyclopedia of War, and he put this in his book. And others have looked into this and confirmed it. But if you go into the Encyclopedia of War, in the index, they label certain wars religious, and it's like under 10% or something. But I got actual. If you want to put my slides up, I got actual studies.
And so I shall. Let's see.
So this study looked at Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism. Okay, it found that Islam was positively associated with more interstate armed conflict. Buddhism was non-significant, so it was in the middle. It didn't go one way or the other. But Christianity was negatively associated with interstate armed conflict. So Christianity is actually reducing war and conflict. This study also found out that religiosity reduces one's desire to fight in a territorial dispute. So if you want to look at anything, religion is actually decreasing war, not increasing it, especially Christianity. This study specifically shows that we see that when states are Christian, we see less interstate armed conflict, which is the opposite of Islam. So you could make the case that maybe Islam is associated with more war and violence, but not Christianity.
And so here's what's interesting. Let me get this off the screen. Oops. All right, there we go. Notice what just happened. Bill Maher, he basically says something that he would have just picked up by hearing it, and it would have resonated with him as sort of an aggressive atheist. Religion causes war. You know, if you just get rid of religion, there will be less war and stuff like that. Oh, that makes sense. Notice they'll hear that. They'll share it. They'll share it for decades. They'll share it on their shows and everything. It never crosses their mind to say, "Hey, let me actually look up a study on this and see if what I'm saying is factually correct." It never crosses their minds. It just doesn't. And so, again, my issue is not that they believe something and they're totally wrong about it. We're all wrong about things. We're all wrong about things. That's normal. It's it's this constant barrage of we're the champions of reason, we're the smart ones, you guys are the dumb ones. And like
Yeah.
you can go through every single claim they're making and look it up, and it's totally wrong. And you could point this out to his face, and on the next show he'd be saying the exact same thing over again. And that's guys, that's just, isn't that weird? Just drop the claim that you're in this special class of intellectual honesty and integrity that everyone lacks. You're not. I have no. You guys don't seem to care even slightly. As long as the criterion seems to be, if this helps us attack religion, then we'll say it, even if it's completely false. That seems to be the criteria. Keep in mind, again, I'm not talking about all atheists here. I'm talking about a certain breed a certain breed of atheists that is just now it's becoming obviously silly to the world.
Yeah, I mean, anyone can read a great book called The Myth of Religious Violence by William Kavanaugh, and it just shows you can't separate religious from political, economic, social factors and wars. So, like, you could make the claim there might be religious motivators, but they're always going to be tied with like political motivators. So, like, you look at like something like the 7 Years' War. Like, if that was a religious war, why is France siding with the Protestants? Why is the Pope blessing that? Why against the Holy Roman Empire? Why is the Holy Roman Empire have entire legions? Well, I mean, I guess they wouldn't call them legions, but like units of Lutheran troops fighting for them. Like, this wasn't what people think it is. This was a political war that's been relabeled a religious war.
Mm-hmm. And you can keep saying that. It would be pretty irrelevant to Bill Maher for some reason. Although I have to give him credit. He will sit in his room and listen to someone like Jordan Peterson or listen to someone who disagrees with him. It's just, it seems to make no long-term impact in that he can be exposed on something 20 times and he'll have a different guess and just say the same thing over again. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird to me.
Somebody contact Bill Maher or this podcast, even get David on one time and myself on.
Yeah. Get IP on there. Get IP on there to talk about some stuff.
You could go and talk about Islam. He'd love it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, then he'd be nodding in agreement. He'd be vigorously nodding in agreement with everything I say. All right, here we go.
Religion, I could take any number of reasons why I think it's better to junk the whole thing, but
Wait for it.
start with religions are supremacist just by their nature. If you're telling people what happens when you die, which nobody knows, and you're telling who the great master of the universe is, you kind of have to be in a place where you can't abide other thoughts on the subject. And certainly all religions are like that. Islam is super supremacist in that way. And a lot of the people today who are speaking for it will tell you right to your face, why am I supporting this? Because Islam is the best. Of course, obviously. That's why we justify these things. And certainly the Bible, same thing. I mean, God is...
We'll pause this because this is a separate one. I think there are a couple interesting things with his claim that religions are supremacist, as if that somehow automatically makes it wrong. I have to say that, I mean, I'm trying to think like whatever his position. Most people who have a position want to defend and promote their position and say that the position is correct. He's a leftist. Does he want the entire world to become leftist? Yeah. Does he want Islam to agree with it? Does he want Muslims to change their minds and agree with him? Yeah. Does he want Christians to change their minds and agree with him? Yes. Does he want everyone in the world to change their minds and agree with him because he believes he's right? Yes, because he believes that his position is correct. You could raise the exact same objection to any sort of moral claim that you take seriously. If you want to say murder is wrong, okay, if other people say murder is fine, you're going to be a supremacist with that in the sense that he's talking about, saying, no, I don't care if you disagree. I don't care what culture you're from. I don't care stop that stuff right now. And what's amazing is he's about to do it with slavery. He's about to, no, it doesn't matter what other people think. Slavery's wrong, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, how did the champions of reason and logic not spot the inconsistency? I'm going to condemn this position because it says it's right and that everyone needs to be on board with this. And now I'm going to say that all these positions are wrong because they do not accept what I'm saying right here, and everyone has to agree with me on this. It's like, what? Dude, how do you not? I don't know. He seems to have no inconsistency detector with respect to his own position.
And Peterson calls him out on that in a little bit, which I like. So, I mean, like, I don't even know what he means by supremacist here. Like you saying that, like, we're not saying that like a certain group of people are better than everyone else because of skin color or because of just beliefs or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So, like, I don't know what he means by would say that Christianity is supremacist, because we Christians believe we're supposed to be the least of the least, that God shows no favoritism, that we're all equal in Christ, that we are all children of God and all the image of God because we're all descended from Adam. So, like, what does he mean by supremacist? I don't see how that could actually manifest in Christianity. And
yeah, really there, I have to say, and this I'm not crazy about. He seems to use the word supremacist because it has a very negative connotation, right? Like, What is he, in the context of what he's saying, what does he mean? He means, oh, you've got a position and you say you're right and everyone else is wrong. And I'm going to call it supremacist because when we think of supremacists, we think of like white supremacists, something like, we think of something like that. And therefore, then religion is this bad thing. What's amazing is his atheist fans, I mean, the atheists who are kind of like him, the new atheist variety of atheists will be watching this going, yes, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yes, these religious people think they're right and that they want to make the world agree with them. That's why we have to destroy religion and make everyone agree with us. And it's like, you guys just complained about people saying they're right and everyone has to agree with them. And you guys are exactly the same. That's weird to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Weird stuff, Billy.
Very supremacist for the Jews. I find it very amusing.
Let me back up, because he's saying that the Bible is like that with the Jews.
We justify these things, and certainly the Bible, same thing. I mean, God is very supremacist for the Jews. I find it very amusing that the thing that they are accusing.
He's about to go on to violence in the Old Testament and stuff. But on that quick claim that the Bible is supremacist with the Jews, because I keep hearing that. Oh, the Bible says the Jews are chosen. The chosen. That's what it is. The Jews don't believe they're chosen. They have to exterminate everybody else into it. Do you get that impression? Because, I mean, we look at it, you read it, and you have a list of charges against the Canaanites. And then God says, hey, you children of Israel, I'm not sending you in there because I think you're great or better than anyone else. You're not. I'm fulfilling a promise to Abraham, and I'm punishing these people because I just gave them 4 centuries to repent, and they still won't repent of all these things they're doing, child sacrifice and things like that. And then he tells the Jews, if you do the same things they do, I'll treat you in exactly the same way. So, hey, I'm punishing these people because of these horrible things they're doing. Don't do those things. If you do, I'll treat you in exactly the same way. And
yeah, I believe it's Deuteronomy 7, I think, is where it says that. It says, like, you were not chosen because there's something special about you, but you were chosen because it says it was not because you were more in number than the other people. The Lord has set his love on you and chose you, for you were the fewest of the people. But it is because the Lord loves you and is keeping the oath that he swore to your fathers, that the Lord has brought you as a mighty hand out of the house of slavery. And then you get all these verses like Deuteronomy 10 about love the stranger, Leviticus 19:34, love the stranger, cursed is anyone.
Side note, that's actually really important there, because he says love your neighbor as yourself, but then he goes, love the stranger, or some translations will put the foreigner among you. And it would say, because you know what it was like to be foreigners in the land of Egypt. You know how you were treated. So don't treat foreigners as less than you, like you were treated in Egypt. And he's going, as so supremacist, the Jews.
Yeah. You got Psalm 146:9, which says the Lord watches over the strangers. He upholds the orphan and the widow, but the way of the wicked he brings to ruin. So, I mean, like, there's nothing in the Bible that says the Jews are like special because of their race, their ethnicity, or there's something special about them. What they're chosen for what? Okay, well, Isaiah says they were chosen to be a light to the other nations.
To the Gentiles, huh?
They were chosen to be a prophetic nation to deliver the good news of Yahweh to the rest of the world. And that's what we see with Jesus and the Great Commission finally fulfilling that.
Yeah, and so following his reasoning, any person who's chosen for anything, if I say, hey, I need you to go do this, oh, you're supremacist about that person because you're saying he's been given this job. What if an entire group, you said, hey, you group, you're tasked with this job. You have to do this for the world. Oh my goodness, it's supremacist. Look at this. This is what I don't know. It's just this weird situation where he can discuss certain topics and I'll be like, he's right on point, and then he turns to other topics and he has no clue what he's talking about. This is wild stuff.
Right.
Couple super chats real quick. D-Wood and IP. Why should I trust the Alexandrian text type more than the Byzantine text type? So we're talking about New Testament manuscripts here, ladies and gentlemen. To be clear, right off the jump, you get the same gospel. They agree with each other. The two different text families and so on, they agree with each other like 99 point something percent. And so you have a tiny fraction of variance, but do you have? I tend to favor the Alexandrian just with the Bible translations. I go with like ESV and stuff like that. You have any preference?
That's because Dan Wallace says it more aligned with the earliest manuscripts that we have. So like that's why scholars tend to prefer it, because it seems to be closer to the apostles. So that's why.
Okay. So Cerebrum says, David, who's your favorite character in One Punch Man? Mine is Garu. Moomin Rider, which is weird because he didn't really have powers, but I don't know. I like him because he always just flings himself at everything. And it's massively overdramatic. Jesse says, Jehovah's Witness came to my door. That's weird. I haven't seen Jehovah's Witnesses show up to a door in years. Like I lived in the Bronx for like 13 years or something like that. They were active in like the subway stations and so on, but they had at some point they had stopped going door to door. I mean, I'm sure they're going to door in some places, but not nearly what they like the way they used to. So I don't know if it was like an order, hey, stop going to doors or something like that. Jehovah's Witnesses came to my door. Their conversation went to not believing in Trinity. I went to how that relates to Islam. They didn't stick around. Tactful dismissal. That's pretty funny. And let's see. No comment from Muhammad's great warrior Khalid bin Walid. Baby video game controller sits in a diaper under. Oh, that's a super sticker. I was like, what kind of weird comment is this? Fox says, better than the Bill Maher you guys should get on the Mike Winger show. Better than the Bill Maher you guys should get on the Mike Winger show. We don't want to be on stupid, boring show that no one watches. All right.
The Jews of today of doing colonizing, ethnic cleansing, which are neither true.
Oh, let me back that up slightly.
I mean, God is very supremacist for the Jews. I find it very amusing that the thing that they are accusing the Jews of today of doing, colonizing, ethnic cleansing, which are neither true, are true in the Bible. That's exactly what God tells the Jews to do. Ethnically cleanse the Canaanites, commit genocide if you have to. God tells them, kill all the men. This is this in the Bible. You've written about it in there. To kill all the men, the Midianites, another number of people, kill all the men and the women who aren't virgins, kids. I mean,
standard pattern of human warfare.
All right, what are your thoughts on this, IP? So Bill Maher brings up there's this issue of ethnic cleansing. He's saying, so the Jews now are being accused of genocide and ethnic cleansing, and he's saying it's not true. It's not, they're going after terrorists, and people are just accusing them of that. And he says, but if you go to the Bible, that's actually what it was. It was genocide. There are multiple ideas going on about that. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this?
So, no, that's not what's going on. First, he's referring to Numbers 31, where Moses commands to kill the Midianites, but keep the girls for yourself. And scholars like Robert Alter have noted, God doesn't issue that command. It says Moses was angry, so he's actually acting out of his anger and going further than what God commanded. And he violates the war theory of what we see later in Deuteronomy about not killing the women and children. So he's actually going against what God commands in Deuteronomy. So there's a problem there. And with the conquest, as I pointed out so many times, the text is steeped in the ancient culture of the time. It's hagiographic hyperbole. So you get a place like Joshua 10, they fight this big battle with the Amorite kings, and it says they wiped them all out. And then in the very next verse, it says, and then the remnant who was among them fled into the cities. Well, okay, you can't take both those verses literally. And scholars like K. Lawson Younger Jr. have noted that what's going on is this is hyperbolic war language of the time. Like Tutmosis says Tutmosis III says he wiped out the Mitanni army. No, he didn't. He defeated them in battle. They came back and they had just as much strength. We see this constantly throughout ancient Near Eastern war annals. So it's not what people think it is. And God doesn't say, I want the Canaanites dead because I don't like their ethnicity or skin color. It's because it's directed towards the Amorites, who were invaders who came down from the north and conquered a lot of the land in the 14th century BC. So just before the 13th century BC with the Exodus. And so a lot of the anger is directed towards them. And again, steeped in that type of hyperbolic language is about taking the land away from people that were committing things like child sacrifice, using the land for its abhorrent practices. And so I don't know what people want here. Like if you go back in time and you saw what the Amorites were doing, you'd probably join with Israel. I don't know what to tell you.
And this is there's this tendency to think if you say, oh, this is hyperbolic, that you're just making something up because you don't like it. Guys, when the text strongly indicates that there's some hyperbolic language in here and you say, I think this is hyperbolic, then you have a reason to think it's hyperbolic, and it's not just your feelings. So basically all the groups that are said to be completely wiped out and exterminated, they appear later. So even Bill Maher just brought up the Midianites with Moses and so on. So the Midianites were completely wiped out, except for, the ones that weren't taking part in Balaam's plot. They were incorporated into Israel. Okay, Judges 6, the Midianites come in and conquer Israel. Okay, that's later. So either the authors are insane and they don't understand that once a group has been completely wiped out, they can't show up and conquer you later, or there's some kind of hyperbole going on here, right? And you see this over and over again. The Amalekites get completely wiped out until the very last man, and then he's killed. And what happens? Same book. Later on, they go out to fight the Amalekites. This happens over and over again. And so the question is like, what's going on here? And so again, either you have to grant some level of hyperbole, even if you want to say, okay, they exterminated most of them, but some survived or something like that. Okay, then saying they're all wiped out is some level of hyperbolic. Then the question just becomes like, what degree of hyperbole are we talking about? And what Mike was pointing out is it's pretty standard back then to talk about groups that you were defeating in military battles as completely wiping them out. It's like it gets compared to today when I say the Pittsburgh Steelers just annihilated the Chargers. They exterminated, they crushed them, they slaughtered them. None of that is literal. That's not literal. What I actually mean is they defeated you, and I'm using hyperbolic language of slaughter and annihilation and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and John Walton in his book, The Lost World of the Israelite Conquest, points out that when it speaks of haram, which is talks about devoting to destruction, it's probably more referring to the identities, like the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites. You need to devote to destruction these identities. And they make a comparison to like when the Allies attacked Nazi Germany. We went and we destroyed the ideology. We destroyed the Nazi identity. But that doesn't mean we annihilated all the people. We fought the soldiers. We put a lot of the high elites on trial. We annihilated the Nazi identity. We harammed the Nazi identity. That doesn't mean we killed literally every person. So they make that comparison in their book, and I think that's a pretty good way to understand what's going on here.
Yeah, guys. So long story short, I don't even say that that the hagiographic hyperbole explanation is like fully correct or something. Like I don't know. I know that there are some issues that arise from the text itself. It's not us in the modern world going, oh, that seems really bad, so let's interpret it figuratively or hyperbolically or something like that. It's in the text. You have all these commands to completely exterminate the population, and those are used interchangeably with commands to drive them off the land little by little over time. It's like, okay, which one is being commanded? You have a couple of options. One, the commands are completely inconsistent, and the writers were insane. They didn't realize, hey, it's very different things to drive someone off the land little by little. That's very different from completely wiping out the populations. So that's one possibility is the writers are just insane. Another possibility is that they actually do mean the same thing. One is hyperbolic. So the actual command is to drive these people off the land. they were doing disgusting things. You don't get to be there anymore. Go somewhere else. Scatter them. Versus completely exterminating them and so on. And so you've got that. You've got that. You have all these commands that are used interchangeably that sound like they're commanding very different things. And so if they're actually commanding the same thing, then you've got some hyperbole going there. Two, again, the groups that are said to be completely exterminated show up later in massive numbers. So it looks like the language that said they were wiped out is hyperbolic if they're around later. Again, the alternative is that the writers are just insane. And then third, as IP was pointing out, you have other people writing during the time. You have other groups writing at the time, and they will describe their victories as completely wiping out the opposition and so on. So the point here is, even if you want to say, I don't know exactly what's going on, it's not as clear cut as someone like Bill Maher makes it out to be. What are you talking about? Look, Old Testament is just all genocide. I haven't bothered to read any studies on this. I haven't bothered to look at how what scholars think about this. I just say, it says right here, the Midianites are wiped out, so that's what happened. I ignore the fact that the Midianites are clearly there later. I ignore everything, and I just say, see, the Bible promotes genocide, and this is this is how you're supposed to approach a text, according to our friend Bill Maher. Hey, shout out to Fisherman's Corner for gifting 20 Apologetics Roadshow memberships. Thank you, sir.
No, but for people who take a book as the guide to morality, it's filled with terrible morality. But again, not to keep beating a dead horse about why religion is so horrible in any form, but
it's filled with terrible morality. IP, you've read the Bible, haven't you?
Uh-huh.
Did you read when you read the Bible, have you concluded that you're supposed to go exterminate people?
Nope.
That's weird, because it sounds like that's what he's saying. It's like, oh, this is your guide to morality. When I read the Bible as my guide to morality, I tend to think, okay, what are the commands that are directed towards me as a Christian? And it's things like love your neighbor, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those are the things that are actually commanded to me. I take these as pretty good guide to morality. And the reason Bill Maher is dumb is he has absorbed these things over time as well. He just doesn't realize it. He thinks that atheists somehow came up with this stuff. But he's absorbed. That's kind of the point of Dominion, isn't it? Like everyone has kind of absorbed.
Yeah, if you want to put my slides back up, I have a quote there from Dominion.
Let's see. Let's get Dominion.
Yeah. So he says, humanism derives ultimately from claims made in the Bible that humans are made in God's image, that the Son died equally for everyone. There's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. Repeatedly, like a great earthquake, Christianity has sent reverberations across the world. He's not the only one who said this. We see this in the same...
Hang on. What kind of Christian apologetics book is that?
That is a book written by the atheist historian Tom Holland.
Oh, atheist historian. Oh, look at those keywords. By the way, here's what's amazing. You'll have an atheist historian who actually does the research, and he'll put out a massive book. Subtitle, How the Christian Revolution Remade the World. And then you'll have Bill Maher. Well, here's something I heard from my friend in college, and I'll just still be sharing that decades later, and never crosses my mind to research any of this stuff. And he's the champion of reason, and Tom Holland's a moron, according to him. Sorry about that. Go.
I mean, like other books have said similar things. Like this is a great book called Christianity and Human Rights, where every chapter has a different author. And they know that, Christianity has played a vital role in this long tradition we have of human rights, beginning in the Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th century. There's a book called Christian Human Rights. And he says the general thesis of Christian human rights is that through the lost and misremembered trans-war era, it is equally, if not more viable, to regard human rights as a project of the Christian right, not the secular left.
What?
Yeah. And again, I'm pretty sure he's not a Christian. I think he's Jewish. But like one of the things he points out is that like a lot of our talk about rights comes from Christianity, comes from this idea that, hey, where are we getting this idea that everyone should be equal? Okay, well, we have a tradition in the West of everyone is related through Adam, that everyone is somehow made equal by God in Christ's eyes. And so this kind of talk comes out of the Christian West, and it creates things like human rights. And this is what numerous researchers have been pointing out for years, is that like this idea that, human rights just sort of developed like against Christianity is just not true. It's a lot of this is come from Christianity. If you look at like ancient cultures like the Romans, they didn't believe in human rights. They thought the barbarians were less human than them. If you were a slave, you were less than human than like the elite Romans or the Greeks. They didn't look at people as that were equal. And even if you do it during the time of the Enlightenment, let me see what I got here. So like Voltaire, for example, profited off the slave trade. So did David Hume. Like David Hume said some pretty racist things. These are enlightened thinkers.
Oh yeah, he did. David Hume. He was saying that Hume was saying that the blacks are just inferior in all these different ways and so on, and it got brought up to him. It's like, wait a minute, here's this I think it was a black poet who was writing in like Latin or something like that, and Hume's response was, oh yeah, if you heard a parrot talking, you'd think that it's smart too, and it's just been trained to say some words. It's like, gosh, man.
Yeah. I mean,
guys, if you don't know who we're talking about, these were like the champions of the Enlightenment.
Yeah, and our idea of a lot of our rights, as Tom Holland has pointed out, comes from Christianity. Like John Martins notes that early Christians invented new language to explain why it's wrong to sexually abuse children, because the Romans did that regularly. Edwin Judge has pointed out that mercy was considered a virtue to some in late antiquity, but a lot considered it like against reason. Christianity elevated mercy as to be like a really high and good virtue, and that's why we tend to think of it as today. And a lot of this talk about human rights, as researchers have noted, led to the end of slavery. This was a Christian idea that was new, that came about from people reading the Bible and seeing that we're all brothers and sisters. We're all created by God equally, and therefore no man should own another man. The first person to ever suggest that slavery should be abolished was Gregory of Nyssa, who was a Christian. Like, no one even considered the idea slavery should be abolished until Christians really started saying, you know what, I think this is what the Bible teaches. And then they start pushing the abolitionist movements in the 1800s, and they start fighting for the end of slavery. Meanwhile, in the Middle Ages, people go, what about all that time in the Middle Ages? Well, the Catholic Church was working to make conditions better for slavery. We see it got replaced with not an ideal system, but a better system than slavery, which was serfdom. And the church was really pushing ideas like Christians should not own other Christians. So that caused in later years, different nations to go try to get slaves from other areas like Africa. And then over time, Christians started pushing against that idea as well. Like, hey, you just can't own people because they have different skin color. So this was a long process. I agree it didn't happen overnight. Tom Holland says it was a depth charge. It took time for people to realize the ethics of the Bible that were seeping out and what this meant for drastic terms of how humanity should change. But ultimately, it was Christianity that did end the slave trade, did abolish slavery, and lead to the idea of human rights. Didn't happen overnight. Tom Holland says it was like a depth charge.
And that's just interesting because tying this in with science and so on, because we started by talking about Galileo a little bit, but you just pointed out that it doesn't cross anyone's mind that slavery is wrong. And I forget if it was Athens or Rome, but I remember reading that like 4/5 of the population were slaves. Right? How do you walk into a situation like that and just say, "Hey, slavery! Hey, we need to get rid of slavery"? What are you talking about? It's like that's 80% of the population. What are you talking about? 4 out of 5 people you walk past are slaves.
Right.
That sort of thing takes some time to change. And this is why I find these guys like the Bill Mahers so interesting, is that they understand the problem with saying, hey, George Washington had slaves, and we just need to wipe that. We need to go ahead and wipe that out so we don't talk about that anymore. He understands, wait a minute. These guys inherited a system. Right? He understands the idea that thinking that you're supposed to just start with some leftist utopia is insane. It's insane. You don't get there. You start where you're at, and then you include some ideas that improve it over time, that bring you out of that situation. He would understand that there. When it's the Bible, it's, God should have made like a leftist utopia right there. He should have said 1400 BC, 1300 BC, 1500 BC, whatever dates anyone wants to go with. It should have been, here's the leftist utopia that you can have right there in the Middle East, surrounded by some really, really messed up people doing some really, really messed up stuff. guess what? It doesn't work. And you'd think people would understand that now, because we still do this. We still do this. We say, oh, let's go over to the Middle East. We'll get rid of Saddam. We'll get rid of Assad. We'll go to Libya. We'll get rid of Gaddafi. We'll get rid of the dictators. And what's going to happen? Freedom and democracy will flourish. And we do what? We go over, we get rid of Saddam. What do you get? You get ISIS. And it's like, wait a minute, what happened to the freedom and democracy? I thought the population all thinks like us. And they don't seem to get the idea. You can't just jump right to whatever you think is great. You can't skip right to it if you have a population that has completely radically different ideas from the ones that would give you your leftist utopia. You can't skip right to it. You could walk in and get rid of the tyrant. You could get rid of the dictator. You can do that thing. It doesn't mean the population is going to skip ahead to where you want to go. And this has failed over and over and over again. We keep trying it with the Muslim world. And somehow these guys think, well, you go back to 1400 BC, which would have been significantly worse than anything we're dealing with in the world today. And well, why didn't you get this modern system right back? Wouldn't have lasted 5 seconds.
Well, not only that, just look, it's what's in the Pentateuch. God, they can't even keep the laws that God gave them. They immediately go into Canaan and they start worshiping other gods. And you think they're going to be able to set up democracy and human rights and get rid of slavery? They can't even. Yeah,
they can't stick to one thing. They're going to stick to one thing.
They can't even get monotheism down. Like, come on, that's pretty simple. No, they can't do that. They start worshiping other gods. They are starting engaging in torture. This is not what you think it is, ladies and gentlemen.
And you look at it, and again, what I would say with the United States, you have all these people, the United States was never good because it had slavery. Yeah, and it got rid of it. It got rid of it over time. It got rid of it. In fact, it got rid of it real quick. 1776, you got the Declaration of Independence. Slavery didn't last a century in the United States. Slavery didn't last a century once it was actually the United States.
You know what one of the problems was? I was reading the historian Robert Fogel on this. Is he notes that in the 1700s, a lot of the anti-slave there was Christian abolitionists, but there was also enlightened deist abolitionists, and they were
Thomas Paine was yeah. I mean, he's kind of a douche when he's talking about Christianity, but hats off to him for.
They were trying to rationally justify abolition. And Fogel says around the end of the 1700s, that endeavor had failed. They couldn't do it. The pro-slavery people had basically responded to their arguments and said, you can't rationally refute this. So the abolitionist movement kind of died for a little while. What revitalized it in the 1830s, 40s? Christians, because you can't refute their arguments. They were arguing from what scripture teaches. And that's where the real abolitionist movement took off and eventually initiated the Republican Party, which led to the election of Abraham Lincoln, which led to the Civil War, which got rid of slavery. They couldn't do it in the 1700s based on this rational endeavor, based on the science and the reasoning of the time. It took the Christians to revitalize the abolitionist movement in the 1800s to get it to where it was actually outlawed in the U.S.
Yeah, and again, this is why it reminds me of the issue of like science and so on. So who carried out the scientific revolution? Well, there's a bunch of Christians of one variety or another. You had Catholics, you had Protestants, you had a couple heretics, but all of them believed in God and the Bible. Mm-hmm. And your average atheist who has no clue what he's talking about would say, oh, yes, but they did it in spite of religion, in spite of the persecution. No, you can actually go to their writings. We know why. Their thinking was, wait a minute, this universe that seems so mysterious to us, it's actually created by this cosmic architect, this cosmic mind. It's rational and intelligible, meaning that the right sort of being could actually go and figure it out because it's going to be based on mathematics and things like that. And therefore, since we, according to our religion, are created in the image of God, we're the kinds of things that can figure this out. And so they set about to understand it because they were convinced that they could. One, you have to believe that it can be understood. Keep in mind, if you had no reason to think that the universe is governed by neat little mathematical laws and equations and so on, why would you think that? Why would you possibly think that if I drop this cup, it's going to obey a law? It's going to obey an equation. How would a cup obey an equation? Like, what are you talking? It makes no sense. It's a freaking cup. It can't obey mathematical equation. What are you talking about? Right? Mm-hmm. The Christians believe that no, the laws of nature are made by God. and they're going to be rational. And we are the sorts of things that were made so that we can figure them out. So from an atheist perspective, one, why would you think that the universe is going to be rational? That it's going to be intelligible to begin with. Two, why would you think, given what you are, according to an atheist perspective, which would be you're a more advanced primate. You're a smarter primate. Well, how did you get your cognitive faculties, your ability to reason and so on? How'd you get that? How'd you arrive at that? Well, natural selection, which favors what? Which favors traits that enhance survival and reproduction. But that's the same process that gives the baboon its colorful buttocks and the tiger its claws. It's just, okay, this helps you survive and reproduce. So whatever human reason, from an atheist perspective, whatever human reasoning is, it's something that we have because it helped our ancestors survive and reproduce. Would you ever in a million years say, I have this ability, which is the same ability that a rat has. It's just, we're better at it. And think, therefore, we can uncover the origin of the universe and the laws under upholding our entire. Why would you think that? Would never cross your mind to think that you had those faculties to do that sort of thing. In other words, it would have taken atheists a long time to accomplish a scientific revolution. Someone else had to do that and figure that out for you, because their ideas would have never led to a scientific revolution.
Well, if you go back to like the pre-Christian world, I saw Apologia talking about this on Twitter today, asking like what values, he said something that they regard like what values did Christianity give us that were not in the pre-Christian world. And here's what I would say: it's like, it's not that we're saying that those values didn't exist necessarily. It's saying that they were completely misdirected. They were not prized, or they were not put in the right place. So like a lot of the ancient cultures prioritize honor and order over things like empathy. So like in like ancient Babylon, it would have been more of a sin for a prostitute to leave the brothel, because she's left her place in society. She has violated order, and that's bad. She has been put there for a reason. She should stay there. It doesn't matter if she's being abused by people there. She should stay there because it's her part of society. These were cultures that centered around honor. Like Karl Vandertorn notes, like they didn't have this sense of like integrity. That's not something that came about until after the Judeo-Christian Revolution. I mean, what if you would have an affair in ancient Babylon and no one found out? You didn't commit a sin because no one found out. You didn't bring dishonor to your family. But we would consider that a sin because you brought dishonor to God. We have this concept of integrity. So what Christianity did is, I'll make this analogy. It's like you have all these different ingredients in the world, and people may have some flour, some sugar. What Christianity did is it actually took those and made a cake. People were putting too much flour in. They didn't know they could use sugar. Maybe they weren't cooking it at the right temperature. Christianity prioritized the right values. It put them in the right place. It directed them in the right way. And it created the concept of morality that we have today. It helped us to discover what I would say is true ethics. The objective understanding of ethics is best understood from Christianity. So it's not that we're going to say that these ethics didn't exist prior to Christians, is that they were not directed in the right way. They were prioritizing other aspects that they should not. And Christianity really helped us get back on the track, because again, we as Christians believe that humans are fallen, not that Christianity like changed humanity. It restored us to the way we're supposed to be. And prior to that, we were misdirecting what was valuable and what wasn't, what was virtue and what wasn't.
And so here's what I see with the people like Maher and a lot of that variety of atheists is you have Christians who carry out the scientific revolution that were based on ideas that were part of their religion. And you can ask these exact same atheists, who are the most anti-science people ever? Christians. Why? Because the Bible. Who are the people who abolished slavery and then abolished it almost completely worldwide? That was started by a bunch of Christians and then people who were influenced by Christians. And then you ask these exact same atheists, who are the most pro-slavery people? Christianity, because of the Bible. And it's just like, there's no connection to reality and no concept of, hey, we actually got these ideas from Christians and we're grateful for having these ideas. It's no, we just have to be completely delusional about the entire world. Mm-hmm. Here's an example. Look at Mugirwawara Luffy. You cannot just discount religious wars as if it's not a thing. The fact that people kill for God is not something to ignore. Okay, are we disputing that there are people who've killed for God?
Nope.
Okay, Mugiwara, try to follow the reasoning here. What are you saying? If people kill for God, then that means God is false or God doesn't exist? People kill for politics, therefore there should be no more politics, Mugiwara. Does that make sense to you? People have killed over just belief in right or wrong. We believe that what this culture is doing is so completely evil that we're willing to fight over that. So people fight over morality, Mugiwara. People fight over politics. People fight over morality. People fight over ethics. People fight over these things. Therefore, we must ignore these, and these things are not true. Do you have any idea how stupid and insane that sounds? And that's the thing. You won't apply the exact same. It's exactly what Bill Maher does. Look, here's this objection I have to religion. It's a premises. It says we're right and everyone's wrong. Okay, what's your position, Bill? My position is that I'm right and everyone else is wrong. Okay, how do you not get that? How do you not get that? You right here. But people fought religious wars over something. People fought wars over all kinds of things. What's that mean? That everything is false and no one's right? Do you guys seriously not understand how stupid and insane you sound? How are you, and my question was, how are you the champions of reason when you think like this? It's always inconsistent. It's always hypocritical. You always have no connection to reality. It's always delusional. You live in fantasy land and run around thumping your chest. You see, all these religious people are all stupid. We're smart. I don't know what to do here, man.
Yeah, and you can't show that Christianity is actually the motivator for it. So, like, take the Crusades. The Pope said that anyone who goes and fights in the crusade will be absolved of sins. That's nowhere in the Bible. That's a later idea that the Catholic Church rejects now. So I mean, you can't where is the evidence that this religious war is actually being caused by Christianity? You could say it's being caused by power, a perversion of Christianity. I would say saying that if you go fight in a crusade, you'll be absolved of all sins is a perversion of Christianity. It's some weird religious perversion. But it's not that the actual core tenets of Christianity, what Christianity actually teaches, is causing that. You got to actually show a causal link. You just can't assume it.
Yeah, what you can actually say is people tend to fight over what they think is really important.
Yeah.
So, Mugiwara, that's human nature. What does that mean? That means that anything anyone fights over is somehow false or needs to be eliminated from society? Because that would be pretty darn insane.
Mm-hmm.
Take a couple of super chats and then we'll jump back into this video. Two of my favorite people, Dr. David Wood and Mike Jones. Thank you guys for your work, and the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ Almighty, Son of God, bless you. Thank you. A channel by the name Ancient Paths TV released a video called An Earnest Plea to Muslims a few years back with an evangelistic emphasis. It was well done in my opinion. Might want to check it out. Earnest plea to Muslims. Screenshot that. What are your thoughts on Cliff? I don't know how to pronounce that. Do you know how to pronounce that?
I forget. I've pronounced it before,
I've seen his name in videos. I've never watched one. I thought he was good at first till he got smoked in his Aaron Ra, Matt Dillahunty debates.
I've not seen it. I don't know. I can't comment on it.
Yeah, haven't watched those, so not familiar enough to talk about it. The book Religion and the Rise of Capitalism argues Christianity brought the world modern-day economics and capitalism.
Yeah, Rodney Stark also makes that claim in his book, The Triumph of Christianity, that you start to see capitalist principles coming out in the Middle Ages before even Protestantism, and then Protestantism picks it up and really takes it further. So, I mean, yeah, you could definitely make a case that there are some Christian principles that capitalism did draw on.
IP, where can I get a copy of your slide?
You'd have to email me. So maybe through the website.
If you just mean a slide that he showed, you could probably take a screenshot of a slide that he showed on the screen. If you're talking about more of that, then yeah, you'd have to contact him. Let's see. Amazing Grace was written by a slave ship captain who, because of his Christian beliefs, felt horrible about the slave trade and became an abolitionist. No, he was an atheist who felt bad because he was an atheist, and atheists know what's wrong just by nature. IP, why do you interpret Matthew 16:28 as a conditional prophecy instead of as the transfiguration of John's vision in the book of Revelation?
Okay, well, that's an either or, and I don't interpret it as either of those things. I interpret it as most scholars do. They put that verse, both Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all put that verse right before the transfiguration.
Mm-hmm.
So the general understanding, even Dale Allison makes this case, even though he thinks Jesus was a failed apocalyptic prophet, he says the gospel authors think this is a reference to the transfiguration, or at least they're trying to make it the case. So they're referring to the transfiguration when they're shown the kingdom of God, that they see it coming, and then it's initiated at the resurrection, which Romans 1 also tends to imply. So I don't take it as either. I take it as not. It actually happens in their lifetime. So not sure why you put the either or up there, but I hope that helps.
Yeah. So in your face. For people that say the Enlightenment happened in opposition to Christianity, it has a striking resemblance to the Cambrian explosion. Lack of, yeah, it does. It's it just all this stuff pops out of there. It just pops out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Cassius Marcellus Clay helped found Republican. Yeah, and we're not talking about the boxer Cassius Clay, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about the guy the boxer was named after, who was Cassius Marcellus Clay, abolitionist, Kentucky abolitionist in the 1800s, who was a pretty bad dude. I mean, in a good way. That was a bad dude. I mean, he had people trying to kill him. Five people came at him at once. One shot him right in the chest, and he pulled out his knife and killed one of them. The others scattered and stuff. But that is Cassius Marcellus Clay, was the guy who Lincoln wanted him to be a general or something like that. And he said, I'm not joining your army until I know that a victory for the North would mean the freedom of all slaves in all the places that we're fighting. And in response, Abraham Lincoln put out the Emancipation Proclamation. And so anyway, I made a video about that several years ago. I thought it was important just because Muhammad Ali, who changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, said, I don't like the name Cassius Clay. It's a slave name. He didn't know where his name came from. His grandfather Muhammad Ali's grandfather named his dad Cassius Clay after Cassius Clay, the abolitionist, to honor the abolitionist who convinced Lincoln to issue the Emancipation Proclamation. And by the time you get to Muhammad Ali, it's like, no, I want Muhammad Ali. Muhammad bought, owned, sold, and traded black African slaves, and Ali bought, owned, sold, and traded African slaves. And Muhammad Ali said, I want that name and not the name of the slave name. It wasn't a slave name. It was an abolitionist name, you dummy. That's a problem. Got to know your history, ladies and gentlemen. Got to know your history. Giovanni says, those who have killed in the name of God have committed the great sin of using the Lord's name in vain. What do you mean by earth? What do you mean by earth? What do you mean by rotate? What do you mean by pope? What do you mean by tide?
What do you mean by bye?
That is what Jordan Peterson sounds like sometimes. IP, love how your cat always likes to get in on the live stream. What's his or her name? Yeah, cats like attention. Yeah,
he comes over. He wants attention all the time. Yeah, that's Hades. He's a new cat. He came through our window and decided he wanted to live here like a few months ago. And so he was an alley cat for, I guess, who knows how long. But yeah, he lives here now.
Well, I'm an alley cat. Some say a dirty rat. Cypress Hill. Abraham says, random thought, but IP in the boom boom room. We've talked about that in the past, haven't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We could do somewhere I play Richard II, and you could bring up like.
Oh, so you don't want to be Muhammad meets Inspiring Philosophy. You want to be Muhammad meets some person, and you're going to play the person.
We could do both, because we could do the Richard II one, because Richard II married like Isabella of Spain when she was like 6, but treated her like a daughter. Yeah. And then you could do that thing where it's like I could talk about the historical precedent in the Middle Ages and how there wasn't that much child marriage, and that's an idea I had. I don't know.
Yeah, we could do it. Yeah, we could do both. And it's funny. Frank Turek recently told Vocab he'd be willing to be in the boom boom room. That's pretty funny too. Be funny if we get everyone in the boom boom room. AP, IP, CP, P Diddy. Why you all got so many P's? It's what we do. It's what we do. Europeans encountered slavery from East Africa, Muslim countries. Islam started slavery since time of Momo, who had 50 slaves and his companions. As far as like making it to, I mean, keep in mind, guys, you always had slaves everywhere. Islam kind of like institutionalized this as like this massive trade going across Africa and feeding slaves into the Muslim world.
What's funny is that in Tom Holland's book, he actually has a episode where a bunch of like abolitionists go to Morocco, and the governor there says, "We can't outlaw slavery. That's against our religion."
Yep, that is correct. Answering LDS, IP, is your position on omnipotence that logic is more fundamental than God? Was kind of confused.
No, I mean, logic is not like a thing. So like, it's just basically a description of everything that is and everything that's possible in a metaphysical sense. So if you're thinking about logic in a metaphysical sense, that's what it is. It's not like a thing more fundamental than God, because it's not a substance. It's just a description of what is and what is possible. So you can't think about logic as if God could get outside of logic, because that doesn't make any sense. It's a category error.
Is this in response to when you were talking about people who might deny God's full omniscience because they believe that certain things just can't be known because they're in the future? Was that a response to that, or is he responding to something else you said?
No, I think it's about omnipotence. Like, can God?
No, I mean, like the idea some people have of denying that omniscience includes foreknowledge is that these things can't be known. In other words, they would define omniscience as knowing everything that can possibly be known, but then saying, but the future can't be known yet, and therefore omniscience, you can be omniscient and still not know the future.
Yeah, but I think that's a different view than what he's asking.
No. I'm saying because that people use that as a parallel. And then they say, when we say omnipotence, we don't mean the power to do absolutely everything. We mean the power to do anything that can be done. And what can be done does not include logical contradictions. In other words, omniscience wouldn't grant you the ability to make a square circle or something like that.
Yeah.
So the idea, answering LDS, as far as most people are, because you do have people, I think Descartes was one of them. I think there are one or two others who believe that omniscience means that you can perform, you can create something that is logically contradictory, but that God just doesn't do it. So they believe that God is powerful enough to do those kinds of things, even completely contradict himself. In other words, people who are of that camp, that omnipotence would mean you can do even logically contradictory things, they would respond to the question of could God make a rock so big that he couldn't move it? They would hear that question and go, of course he could. He would make a rock so big that even God himself could not move it. And then he would move it. If you grant that omnipotence means you can do logically contradictory things, then you could just do both. And they wouldn't see a problem with it. Most people would think, no, omnipotence means doing the ability to do anything that can actually be done, and they would think that contradictions are not on the list of things that can possibly be done. Don't forget top P. Top P. That's what we need, because we got top G. Now we just need top P. Christian Apologetics. IP, have you read Ferda's book, Arguing Jesus Grew and Developed His Eschatology to Include Interim? Super interesting. It doesn't demand conditionally to defend Jesus. Also, Dale Allison endorsed it.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I've not read it. No.
I say I'm about to make a video on it, but yeah, Dale Allison seems to have mixed views on Jesus apocalypticism in his interviews.
Sure does, yeah.
All right, let's jump back into this video.
If you read the teachings of the Mormon Church until recently, the things they say about black people are just horrendous. The worst kind of racist thing. And they justify it by talking about that.
Ham.
No, that's interesting. They get it. The black people in religion get it from two sources. The Mormons talk about Cain. Yeah. That black people are a descendant of Cain, and because Cain is a murderer and he did a dark deed, I mean, they're very open about that's why they have dark skin, to remind us of the darkness in their past. I mean, it's just fucking ugly. Yes, the other thing that this...
You familiar with Mormonism, or anyone else here familiar with so he's saying that according to Mormonism, black people are somehow cursed because Cain killed Abel and they're descendants of Cain.
I'm not sure about the origin of it, but I mean, I don't know enough about
Cain. I don't know enough about Mormonism.
Yeah. That was in like the view of the past. So like when we were all spirit children in Mormon ideology, that like the people that fought with Satan became demons, the people that fought with God became white and Mormons, the people that were neutral got cursed with dark skin. It's like the idea. I don't think Mormons hold to that today, but I think that's what was the belief at some point in the Mormon history.
And it kind of flies in the face of what he's saying. His argument is, hey, once it's in a book, you can't change your view at any point. And I don't know, it doesn't seem like that.
Southerners in this country used was Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham
was the contemptuous son.
Also the one who wanted to his dad. I guess, or maybe
so
both.
Hold on. That's not necessarily what's going on. Genesis 9 has a lot of interpretive issues. Scholars debate about it.
Yeah,
I'm
not familiar with that one.
Yeah, well, the reason why is because it goes. Ham says he uncovered it. He saw his father's nakedness, and so something that might be paralleling to Leviticus when it says like, if don't sleep with your mother-in-law, you've uncovered your father's nakedness, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's not the same phrase, but it could be a related idea. The interpretations are like, Ham just did something embarrassing. He should not have been. That would have been very shameful in that culture to see his father lying like that, not cover him. Some think that maybe he did actually commit some horrible, absurd act. Some think that, I think Walton has actually argued that because Noah is often compared with Adam, there was probably a woman at play, even though she's not mentioned, and maybe Ham went in and slept with Noah's wife, and that produced Canaan, the seed of Ham, from that union, and that's why.
So that would be why the curse is on Canaan.
Yeah, but again, it's so speculative. We don't really know what's going on in that little section of Genesis 9. It's a lot of stuff missing.
And would we agree, because this is what he's going to talk about, as far as people saying, black people are cursed because of the curse on Ham. There wasn't a curse on it. It was on Canaan. And so, hence, on the Canaanites, who aren't black. So it's a completely different scenario. In other words, people historically, and you had them in Islam as well, people who tried to connect... something to this curse on Ham, it's okay. That's really stupid, and you have to be talking to a crowd who's pretty ignorant to think, oh, this is why we can mistreat black people.
But Ham, something think the black line runs from Ham,
right.
But both of them again use religion to be justifying what we would today call one of the worst things, racism.
Okay, well, don't.
Little side note, because he just did what that guy who Magirwawa or whoever just did. But look, these people have used religion for something bad. Okay, what's your conclusion? So on the one hand, if you're saying, hey, if someone has used someone for something bad, then the thing is bad. Okay, so there's a problem. If someone uses religion for something good, does that mean that religion's good? So be consistent here. But the other thing is, IP, weren't there all kinds of people who justified their contempt for other races on science? Right, you're muted.
Yes, it was polygenesis. So polygenesis was the idea that the different races have different origins and the whites were superior. And yeah, that Christians were fighting against that idea.
Wait, so that was science though, right? So you see, wait a minute, science, and you even had like eugenics and so eugenics programs and so on. This is all science. This is all science. So again, guys, follow the reasoning, because I do not understand why the champions of reason and logic and science have such a massive problem with basic consistency. The most fundamental, it's like the entry price to the realm of philosophy is understanding consistency. When you say, hey, religion bad because people have used religion for bad things. Okay, follow the exact same. People have used science to justify bad things. What's that mean? Science bad? People have used their atheistic views for bad purposes. What's that mean? Atheism bad?
You see?
Atheism bad. You see? Atheism bad. No concept of consistency.
Nope.
That's a problem.
Right.
Is it worth it to like resurrect that whole structure when it comes without it? It's what I call the one turd in the pool theory. Like, I mean,
I actually like I mean, I disagree with him, but I actually like that he puts it like this. It's funny. Okay, let me back this up. It's funny.
Right.
is it worth it to like resurrect that whole structure when it comes without it? It's what I call the one turd in the pool theory. Like, I mean, a book that contains, okay, we're okay with slavery, it's terrible on women, it's terrible on homosexuals. It's like if somebody said, yeah, but you know what, there's only one turd in the pool, jump on in. I wouldn't jump in if there was even one turd in the pool. And I wouldn't want to like resurrect a book and a mythology that
why? Okay.
So Jordan Peterson is about to point out sort of a glaring inconsistency
Yeah,
here.
he gets them here.
Yeah. So guys, follow the reasoning. If you want to say, hey, but look at all the good things that religion has caused or something like that. If you want to say, hey, look at the positive things. In other words, if you took everything that IP was saying, everything in Dominion about how Christianity has impacted the world, and you wanted to say, okay, even if I were to grant this positive impact, it's like a big pool. It's like a big pool, and you say, oh, here's a big pool, and it's fun to swim in, and it's really good, and it's refreshing. Except there's one turd floating in it. You say, but it's just one. It's just one turd in the pool. So I still don't want to get in the pool. I don't want to get in the pool. I don't care how refreshing the water is. There's a turd in it. I don't want to get in there, right? So that's what he's saying. So if you want to say, so even if you wanted to say that the Bible has had a positive impact in certain ways, it has this really bad impact in these other ways. And therefore, why bring it back at all? So that's what he just flipped to Jordan Peterson here. And we'll see how Peterson responds.
Okay.
you get me?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing incoherent about that argument. Although I think it still leaves you in an awkward position because the postmodernist would say, take a look at your stance and say, well, you defend Western civilization and there's plenty of turds floating in that pool.
Got him.
That is correct. In fact, so Jordan Peterson just pointed out, wait a minute. In other words, all Jordan did was say, okay, here's what you just said. I'm going to demand some level of consistency. You just said, hey, if this thing right here has this one if it's got this one issue associated with it, then you just wipe it out. And Jordan Peterson, but you defend Western civilization. That's had all sorts of problems. In fact, Jordan Peterson could have brought it back to what Bill Maher was saying before this clip, where he was going, and people have a problem with George Washington because he was a slave, and I don't understand. It's a different time and stuff like that. Like, why are you going to wait? Bill Maher, what are you saying? What are you saying when you say, oh, and people are trying to scrub George Washington from history because he was a slave? What are you saying? That you shouldn't? What are the people you're responding to claiming? Hey, there's a big turd in that pool, so let's just get rid of that altogether. We don't want to be in that pool. Get rid of it. And he's like, oh, you guys are insane. You guys are insane. This is what we're talking about, guys. We get to an issue where he disagrees with something and he will apply all these criticisms to it, and it never crosses his mind even once. How would those exact same criticisms apply to anything I believe? It's like he doesn't just defend Western civilization. He's on the left. He's on the political left. So, okay, so has there been problems on the political left? Yeah, he talks about them almost every show, about how insane people in his camp are going. So, plenty of turds in that pool, right? Why do you defend it? If you were consistent, you should be throwing it out, Bill, if you were consistent even slightly, but you don't. Why? I don't know, it's weird. Back up slightly just so we can see that awesome little moment again.
I mean, there's nothing incoherent about that argument. Although I think it still leaves you in an awkward position because the postmodernist would say, take a look at your stance and say, well, you defend Western civilization and there's plenty of turds floating in that pool. Well, but
Okay.
Right.
All right. You win that one.
Well,
I like that he says you win that one, but then he goes on to break down that nope, it's actually a completely different situation. So here we go.
it's rough because
there are plenty of turds
well, we
floating
look back
in that
at the
pool.
past,
That's true.
right? And
But we can. Well, here's the thing: we can fish our turds out. Like we had slavery, but we fished that turd out of the
We did it.
pool. You can't do that. The Bible is the
Jordan Peterson goes, we? Like you and me, we did it.
We had slavery, but we fished that turd out of the pool. You can't do that. The Bible is the Bible.
Yeah,
It's there, and it was written by God.
It was the Protestant evangelists that did that.
Did
that
what?
Took that particular bit of pollution out of the pool, right? That was Wilberforce.
No, it was atheists. It was a bunch of secular atheists who did it, because that's what I think.
Like, well, Peterson just showed that Christianity is not that rigorous. Like you can produce change, does produce progress, as a lot of people have noted. Like so Bill just has this weird monolithic understanding of religion, and it just won't allow any change. I would say that secular liberalism, it doesn't have any rigor to it, so it can just go in all sorts of crazy directions. Christianity allows for progress, but it has guardrails, so it keeps you on the road of progress. You have things like, submit to governments, but also 1 Samuel 8, governments are not necessarily good. And the book of Acts says we must obey God rather than men. So you have guardrails. Don't go too far into authoritarianism, but don't also think government is your savior. Guardrails keeps you on the road of progress. Some religions like Islam don't have a road. They just have guardrails. You can't go forward. You're stuck with the ethics of the 7th century. And then you have secular liberalism. It's like, it's just a wide open field. There's a dirt road, but you can go off into, crazy nationalism. You go off into crazy wokeism and all sorts of nonsense that Bill would reject. So, I would say that you do want some rigor, but you do want progress. I'd say Christianity is the perfect system that allows for progress, but you have guardrails to keep you on the right road.
And as far as Christianity making progress, this is Bill Maher would have no clue about any of this, but this goes way, way, way back. So infanticide was a big issue in the early centuries. At first, Christians had no political power. They would just they would just start collecting babies that people were throwing out. They would start collecting them and taking care of them. Eventually, when they had some political power, then they abolished infanticide, so throwing out babies that you didn't want. Before that, the first major objection to Christians that we have on record is that they wouldn't attend the gladiator games. They didn't want to. They're like, we're not going to sit here and watch people hacking each other up. These people are created in the image of God, and you're forcing them to hack each other up and murder each other. And so this is a big issue for the Romans. Like, shame on you Christians, for not joining, watching the games and stuff with us. Then Christians invent orphanages to take care of kids that no one else wanted to take care of. Instead of throwing them away, they invent hospitals. Then you've got the Renaissance, then the scientific revolution, and so on. They just keep pushing forward, abolishing slavery and so on. There's this idea of progress built into the system. And then you have all these guys who are the recipients of all that progress, and they think, Christianity is the main obstacle to progress. We all just need to be atheists, and then we'll have real progress. And then so millions of people abandon Christianity, become atheists. The whole world starts falling apart, and they're too stupid to figure out why.
Right.
Again, guys, for the 47th time, I'm not talking about atheists in general. I'm talking about this kind right here, that religion bad, atheism good, atheism what are you basing that on? What empirical evidence do you have to base that on? That the world becomes better that people become better as they become, where are you getting that from? I have no idea, but if you guys are the champions of science, you should be able to give some evidence for it. I've never seen any. I've seen zero.
What?
Took that particular bit of pollution out of the pool, right? That was Wilberforce in the UK, and he was completely motivated by religious motivations.
Who were for emancipation.
He was the one who convinced the UK to put their navy against slavery.
In 1776, when our country was declared independent, there were 24 people in this country who belonged to the Abolitionist Society.
Mm-hmm.
One society of the Quakers.
Yeah, watch what he does. This is Bill. You're sounding like a lying scumbag here. So what he's going to do here is 24 newly found. Keep in mind, guys, the United States is a new thing and it just formed. Lots of people have no concept of the United States abolishing slavery. What are you talking about? Before that there was no United States. In other words, it doesn't make sense to say, here's what we have to do as a nation. What are you talking about? We just got our it's like a brand new thing. It's a brand spanking new thing. But he's going to go from there were 24 members of this society to there were only 24 people who had a problem with slavery. So That's the impression I got. But let's back this up a little bit.
In 1776, when our country was declared independent, there were 24 people in this country who belonged to the Abolitionist Society. They were mostly Quakers. 24 people in the whole fucking country thought abolition of slaves was a good idea.
Yeah. Well,
Did you hear what he just said? He just said this society had 24 members. So there were 24 people in the country who thought abolishing slavery was a good idea.
Yeah,
That's what he just said, right? That's what he just said, right?
Yeah.
Everyone said, he just said, okay, there are 24 members of this society in this newly formed nation. Therefore, there were 24 people in the country who thought abolishing slavery was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm looking up.
I mean, like, there were many that were actually anti-slavery. They just weren't part of that one Quaker society. They had various reasons for it as well. There were deists and Christians that were anti-slavery at this point. A lot of Quakers were, of course, one of the earliest groups to get that going. But you also had early Baptists. You had Methodists as well joining in on this. You had a lot of early Christians that were against slavery.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here we go. During the Revolutionary era, all states abolished the international slave trade, but South Carolina reversed its decision. Between the revolution, so keep in mind, that's not saying slavery was abolished. They abolished the international slave trade. So that, in other words, there were steps. First, they abolished the slave trade and so on, and then later, and then later made rules, and then eventually you get to eventually the abolition of slavery. But between the Revolutionary War and 1804, laws, constitutions, and court decisions in each of the northern states provided for the gradual or immediate abolition of slavery. Wait a minute, I thought there were only 24 in the entire country.
I mean, Franklin, Benjamin Rush was. I mean, they weren't part of that society as far as I'm aware.
No southern state adopted similar policies. In 1807, Congress made the importation of slaves a crime effective January 1st, 1808, which was as soon as Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution allowed. In other words, the day they were allowed to ban the importation of slaves as Congress, they did it. The day they were allowed constitutionally to do it, they did it. A small but dedicated group under leaders such as William Lloyd Garrison and Frederick Douglass agitated for abolition in the mid-19th century. Then we have John Brown and so on. All right. Abolitionism in colonial America. American abolitionism began well before the United States was founded as a nation. In 1652, Rhode Island made it illegal for any person, black or white, to be bound longer than 10 years. The law, however, was widely ignored. So you had people ignoring it, but you did have the law. The first statement against slavery in colonial America was written in 1688 by the Religious Society of Friends. In 1688, Francis Pastorius brothers, blah, 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 bunch of guys. A 2-page condemnation of slavery, 1688, 2-page condemnation of slavery, sent it to the governing bodies of the Quaker Church. The intention of the document was to stop slavery within the Quaker community, where 70% of Quakers owned slaves between 1681 and 1705. In other words, they're dealing with their community first. You had Quakers who had slaves, and others said, "No, you can't do that. We got to do something about this." This is between 1681 and 1705. It acknowledged the universal rights of all people. Let's see. Slavery was banned in the colony of Georgia soon after its founding in 1733. 1733. So well before the U.S. Revolution. The colony's founder, James Edward Oglethorpe, fended off repeated attempts by South Carolina merchants and land speculators to introduce slavery into the colony. Actual quote from him, he says, "If we allow slaves, we act against the very principles by which we associated together, which was to relieve the distresses. Whereas now we should occasion the misery of thousands in Africa by setting men upon using arts to buy and bring into perpetual slavery the poor people who now live there free." So that's 1739. Then you have, it goes on and on, 1737, Quaker abolitionist Benjamin Lay. 1739, a literate slave named Jemmy led a rebellion against South Carolina slaveholders. So let's see. Slave revolts, struggle between Georgia and South Carolina led to the first debates in Parliament over the issue of slavery occurring between 1740 and 1742. Guys, this goes on and on and on and on and on about everything that led up to the abolition of slavery. Oh, we even have Thomas Paine here. So he was a deist. Yep. He was a deist. Most of the founding fathers were Christians. He was a deist. One of the first articles advocating the emancipation of slaves and the abolition of slavery was written by Thomas Paine. Titled African Slavery in America. It appeared on March 8, 1775, so before the Declaration of Independence. The Society for the Relief of Free Negroes Unlawfully Held in Bondage by the Pennsylvania Abolition Society was the first American abolition society, formed 14th of April, 1775 in Philadelphia. In 1777, independent Vermont, not yet a state, became the first polity in North America to prohibit slavery. Guys, and anyway, look, this is all stuff you can look up and read. The point is, Bill Maher just inferred that there were only, what did he say, 24 people in the United States who thought slavery was a bad idea.
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, even if you're the biggest Bill Maher fan in the world and you really, really hate religion, is he anywhere in the ballpark of being right? Guys, that's the problem. He has a show. He has a big platform. He's a way bigger platform than me and IP. He has people who watch him. Jordan Peterson doesn't know how to respond to that. Why? Because that's not something. Citing numbers of people in an abolition society in 1776 or something like that is not something most people have done research on. So Jordan Peterson wouldn't know how to respond. We actually look it up. It's total idiotic nonsense that everyone watching just saw. Everyone who was watching him on his video and his podcast just saw him, and now they all run out and go, "Oh, you see, only 24 people. Only 24 people in the entire country thought there was a problem with slavery. Only 24 people. 24." And it's complete nonsense. It's complete idiotic nonsense. And it doesn't ever seem to bother them. If it were a Christian if a Christian were spouting complete nonsense, I mean, like factually false, complete nonsense, atheists, look at this, look at the dumb Christians, they're so dumb. How could they be so dumb? When your guys say it, it's totally fine. Again, for the 487th time, I'm not talking about all atheists here. These guys, the new atheists, the guys like this, they're just in I don't know, there's like this hypocrisy built into it and this lack of consistency that really, I can disagree with tons of people, Muslims, Hindus, whoever, different Christian groups, atheists, whoever. It's kind of, there has to be this, do we all agree that like consistency is important and that if we're wrong about something, we should try to correct that? If you say something, you believe something, and it's like factually false and you're spouting nonsense, are you willing to correct yourself? That's important. That's whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, an atheist, whatever, that's important. And when you don't have that basic level of integrity, like it doesn't matter as long as I'm attacking religion and making fun of religion, I can say whatever I want. It doesn't matter if it has any connection to reality whatsoever. If that's how you think and it can be pointed out to you, look, here's where you're factually wrong, and you just keep saying it, I don't know. I can't, you're in a different category. It's like it's like when I'm talking to a Dawa guy. If I'm talking to a Dawa guy, my main concern when I'm first having a discussion with a guy is he an actual liar or is he sincere but wrong? You're in two completely different categories in my mind. Someone who is just has no concern for the truth and will gladly say whatever pops into his head, even if it's completely false, versus someone who believes things that I disagree with, but he's sincere. He's not trying to deceive me or something like that. This is wild stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's there's more here. Let's just get Jordan Peterson's response, and then we'll take the last.
No, he kind of rambles on for a little bit. I think that's basically most of it. He just kind of goes on a big Jordan Peterson rant after this.
Okay, let's see if there's anything. I'll play for a few seconds. We'll see. And then
Wilberforce in the UK started out kind of as one.
But it gathered steam.
Right.
It gathered steam, and 87 years later, 77 years later, we did something about it. That's the big.
No, it wasn't.
Gathered steam because of Christians. That's why it gathered steam.
Yep. And so I think he's going to see. So you see, this is This is why we can change, but, you know, religion doesn't.
Argument against religion versus science. It's self-correcting. We can be self-correcting.
He just connected it to science. What the heck did the abolition of slavery have to do with science, you giant walking clown emoji? Look at this. Listen.
7 years later, we did something about it. That's the big argument against religion versus science. It's self-correcting. We can be self-correcting. Religion, to a lot of people, seems too rigid. I mean, its virtue is that it's set in stone. This is what we believe. That's what they're counting on, is that people want that sort of certainty about something.
Okay, so
that it's not going to change. That's what the Pope is always selling.
All right, so Jordan's going to respond. Yeah,
I mean, the point of the Pope is that, you know, and with councils is that you can go back and look at scriptures and see if you've actually been interpreting it right. I mean, this is what Robert Bellarmine, one of Galileo's opponents, said. Like, if it turns out you're right, we have to reinterpret scripture. So there is self-correcting aspects there. I mean, he's just absolutely wrong that Christianity does not have that. We most certainly do, because we're commanded to love one another. Sometimes we learn more about how to do that properly. Like,
and you can,
marriage is evil.
Yeah, and you have a basis for saying, hey, here's something we've been doing and we're wrong. Why? Because we're not treating people like they're created in the image of God. We are not loving our neighbors here in this case. We're not loving our enemies in this case. We have not been doing to others as we would have them do unto us. We haven't been obeying scripture. You can actually call people out on that. I have to wonder, IP, on what actual basis we know how Christians abolish slavery, right? They went around, how can you justify treating people who are created in the image of God like this? How can you do it? And I just kept pressing them. What are you talking about? Isn't this your brother in humanity? Isn't he your fellow human being? How can you, if you were in that situation, would you want other people treating you like that? They were able to call out people on the basis of their religious ideas, and they were able to actually change the world, again, to where century after century after century after century after century of humanity, every part of it never crosses their minds to have a problem with slavery until Christians, at the beginning, Christians start freeing slaves and so on. And they were doing this for centuries. In other words, before even abolishing slavery, Christians would free slaves if they could. Right. If you had money, another person didn't want to free his slaves, you'd say, okay, I will buy your slaves from you. And wealthy Christians would buy other people's slaves, then free those slaves. In fact, that's one of the reasons if you wanted to, basically slavery was wiped out in Europe. It wasn't by making some international law or something like that. They just kept freeing slaves until there were almost no slaves left. And so if you were going to a new part of the world where you weren't going to have, it's a different situation, and you wanted some cheap labor, you could get slaves, but guess what? Now you don't have any more slave markets in Europe. So where do you go? You got to go to where people are still selling slaves. And the slave trade was alive and well in Africa. That's why they ended up going there. And then what happened? Then the United States, you got the Declaration of Independence in 1776, and then you have the Revolutionary War, and then the United States becomes a nation. Slavery didn't last a century. Slavery didn't last a century. And so again, it's just, anyway, here's the point. We know how Christians abolished slavery, and going all the way back to the first century, there was clearly a tension in Christians' mind. How can we treat people like this, given what we believe? So there was always a tension. Eventually, there was always a tension there. Eventually, it gets abolished. We know on what basis they abolished it. IP, on what, if it had been atheists in charge, I'm not aware. You could have atheists who have personal opinions on the thing. On what consistent basis could an atheist who doesn't believe in slavery tell an atheist who does believe in slavery, here is why you need to abolish slavery? Are you aware of anything?
I mean, you could say that maybe they're not propagating genes as much because they're not producing as much children, perhaps.
I mean, if you want to do that, you have to throw out atheism, because atheists don't propagate as many children as non-atheists.
Exactly, yeah.
So the point is that you could make that argument, but it'd be a stupid argument.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's right here with Bill Maher. You had a global institution, slavery basically foundational to the economy in various places around the world. It took a long time, but Christians eventually abolish it on a global scale. And Bill Maher is standing on the shoulders of giants. In other words, people like Isaac Newton, they understood, hey, I just came up with this great thing. Yeah, I was only able to do this because a lot of people did a lot of work before me, and I'm standing on their shoulders. Bill Maher, just like Richard Dawkins and all these other guys, they're standing on the shoulders of everyone who came before them. And then they're sitting there going, what a bunch of idiots who came before us. Look how high, look how far we are. Look how far ahead we are. Not really. You only got to where you are because of other people who did stuff before you. And then you're looking back at all the people who came before you and saying, look at these morons. They didn't do anything. They're just a hindrance to everything.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't everyone just be like us? And then, we're the people who are against slavery. Christianity is the religion of slavery. We're the people who defend science. Christians are the ones who are against science. And this, Bill Maher, is why, as much as I can agree with you when you say something very commonsensical about something that's going on in the world today, you have absolutely no clue what in the world you're talking about whenever you talk about religion, atheism, anything like that. You're absolutely clueless. And you don't care. And that would be one thing. There are all sorts of things I don't know and I don't care about. I would not be running my mouth about being the champion of one of those topics if I had no clue what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. Any final thoughts on what we just watched? Again, there's way more. There's like an hour and a half discussion, guys. You can go ahead and watch that.
Read a book is what I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say read a book too. Let's take a couple super chats and we'll head on out. Let's see. IP, Kip and Josh responded to the vid you and Dr. Falk made. Do you guys plan another response?
No, they didn't. They didn't respond. They had a guest on named Mark Lucher who didn't really say anything that was debunking what we said. I watched it like over the weekend, actually. Just like someone said, hey, did you know this happened? I'm like, no, I'll check it out. I was actually happy with a lot of stuff Mark said. However, they're in full damage control mode, and they're planning several responses, which is not a good look. But we'll take them as they come. If there's anything good in there, yeah, we'll address it. If there's anything we think is worth addressing, but as of now, they want to do like 4 or 5 I think responses on like Rationality Rules channel, and I was like, what are you like? You're really that triggered by this stream? Wow. It's like, you guys are really in damage control mode if this is how much you're doing. So, we have some tricks up our sleeves. I talked to Fogg a little bit over the weekend. They want to keep doing this. They can keep doing it, but we got other stuff we can use. So we'll see what they come up with, I guess.
IP, do you think Christianity contributed to professionalism in the sense of behavior and vulgar language usage?
Yeah, it definitely would have contributed to that culturally in different ways. Just people's interpretation of the scriptures, I think so. So you definitely see that coming out of Victorian England, for example. I'm not sure how directly it would be. I've not looked too much into this specific topic.
Am I the only one who thinks IP looks like a Christian Rumsey?
Who the heck is Rumsey?
I don't know. I clicked on it. There's like a million people named Rumsey, so I don't know what he's even talking about.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Let's see. Based Autistic says, been working on something for a while. I've noticed that when I explain problems with Mormonism, like racism, people agree with me. When I show Islam teaches same ideas, people are now in a corner, but no one calls me a Mormonophobe, the Mormon phobe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is an issue. Based Autistic, people have been basically conditioned to think that the only possible reason someone could object to Islam, even if you're talking about child marriage and all these other issues, the only real reason that someone might object to Islam is racism. You hate brown people. But guess what? If you criticize something in Mormonism, well, you got mostly a bunch of white people, mostly a bunch of white Americans. So they can't use the race card. And so if you point out, hey, here's a problem with Mormonism, then, oh yeah, that is a problem. But if you say, hey, I got a problem with Islam, oh, shame on you, shame on you.
Racist.
Just because you don't like brown people. So when you get in that situation, point that out. Say, wait a minute, when I said this about Mormonism, you said this. When I pointed out about Islam, you say something completely different. Well, what's your basis there for treating these issues completely differently? It's a common trope in the BOM that God punished people, Book of Mormon, that God punished people by cursing their skin to be black, unbelieving Lamanites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know pretty much anything about Mormonism. I had a couple of Mormon missionaries show up a long time ago, talking like 2004, 2005, and we actually invited them to give their presentations. It was a series of 6 presentations, and it was us and a couple of other apologist students and so on. And we invited them to go through their 6 presentations, and as long as we got to ask questions about them and so on, and we didn't. Anyway, they gave up by, I think, part 4. They gave up and then blacklisted us. Don't come to that house anymore. Anyways, never encountered any. Oh no, there was one more instance where I ran into Mormons. I've mentioned this before. It was Harlem. I went to a philosophy meeting about the problem of evil at Columbia University, and so to get down there, I take the 2 train from the Bronx, get down to Harlem, and then just walk over to Columbia. But as I was walking back, there was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 young Mormons. They all looked like they were like 16 or 17 or something like this, right on the corner of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, in the middle of a group, arguing with everybody about Mormonism and stuff. Anyway, I start talking to one of these guys for a little while. I start talking to one of these guys like, hey, what are you doing here? Anyway, he pitched Mormonism to me and stuff. But then I asked, like, why are you here? And he explained, he said, we're part of a group of Mormon missionaries who are going to go to the Middle East to reach Muslims with the message. And he goes, so we realize we need to toughen ourselves up. So we're going to where we know we can actually get some really good arguments going. I was like, actually, it's kind of funny. Yeah. Let's go to the middle of Harlem and start arguing about Mormonism with everyone around us and stuff like that to kind of prepare the way for going to the Middle East.
Makes sense. Yeah.
How can I argue against the whole Mary Queen of Heaven and praying to saints arguments? IP come around more often.
No comment.
I would have to say I don't know. There are people who deal with that issue and those issues and debate them. I'm not among them. So keep in mind, not saying these issues aren't important. I'm just saying there are people who focus on that and study those issues, and so that'd be better for them. He's right about Mormonism's past racism is found in the Pearl of Great Price. They believe black people fought for Lucifer before creation. Well. Knives are used to kill people, so knives are bad. That's right. That's the same reason. But religion has been used for bad, therefore it's bad. Yeah, knives too. What are your thoughts on a lot of abolitionists being against slavery for economic reasons?
Yeah, there were a lot of that in the 1800s. So a lot of the hardcore religious abolitionists had to compromise with some of these guys. They had to basically be like, okay, you're against slavery for economic reasons. We're against it for moral reasons, but we have to work together. So the beginning of the Republican Party was a coalition of different people, and the hardcore abolitionists had to make some compromises on that to get it done. So yeah, it wasn't. We're not saying they were all in it for moral reasons. There were economic reasons as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about it, abolitionists. Back then, you would want to give every reason you could. And so you had people who came to the United States, or came to the colonies originally and so on, later came to the United States and so on, for different reasons. You had people who came to the colonies because, for religious purposes, they wanted religious freedom. Those people tended to be against slavery. You had people who were coming here to make money. They tended to be for slavery. And so if you're telling people who want to keep slavery going because of, what are you talking about? I can't get rid of my slaves. That's how I'm making money. Then one of the arguments you would want to use, if you can, is not just, hey, it's morally wrong, but hey, do you know it's actually not good? It's actually not good economically. In other words, why wouldn't you make that case if you could? Mm-hmm. Let's see. Well, he's no Ridvan, but this has been extremely educational. Thanks for the history lesson. Why were my history classes so lame? That's a good question.
Good question.
Lots of stuff people leave out. David, this is very important what you're saying. At no time in American history was there not people saying slavery was wrong. Yes, It's exactly. There were always, as long as the U.S. has been here and before, there have been people arguing against slavery, and they eventually got their way. Hey, Isa, he says, I'm with you, bros. Let's abolish slavery. Yeah, fortunately, there's only a couple places in the world that still have it, but yeah, need to get rid of it there as well. Armin Davabi has data showing you can't beat Islam with Christianity. When will you talk to him? Oh, really? What's gonna beat Islam? Secular liberalism? It's doing a bang up job. Listen, Armin, 14 centuries, Christians said, yeah, you're not bringing that stuff here. For 14 centuries, Christians kept Islam from dominating Europe. There were other places that Islam actually took over Christian areas that were Christian. Christians learned, hey, wait a minute. Once these guys win, you don't come back from this. So we're not playing around with this stuff. The moment Europe goes secular liberal, they can't invite Islam in fast enough.
Right.
So if I were to make an argument, I'd say, okay, 14 centuries. Again, you had lots of places that were Christian that are no longer Christian and so on. Christians got the memo and said, okay, we cannot play around with this stuff. When do you start inviting in Islam and can't get enough of it? Yeah, so I would have to disagree with Armin. And let's see, last two here. Frieza says, hey, king of voice cracks. Hey, that's pretty rude. Hey, Buff D. Wood. I had a discussion with a friend, and he claims Enoch should be in the canon. What was the criteria used to you said include it. You mean exclude it?
Yeah, I do. I did a video on this. No, Enoch was never part of any Jewish or Christian canon. The Tanakh never included Enoch. It was pseudepigrapha. We have no evidence of that. Some early Christians did consider it scripture, I think. The Ethiopian church does, but they have a much looser definition of canon than we do. It's actually as heresy. It says Enoch is the Messiah. So it should not be in the canon, no.
And you say you've got a video on that?
Yeah, the Book of Enoch Examined.
Okay, so Frieza, check out IP's video, The Book of Enoch Examined. All right, ladies and gentlemen, just wanted to go through that discussion because it's really I find this entire issue really, really interesting in that you have this sort of aggressive atheist movement sort of explode onto the world scene. And hey, we all need to leave religion, abandon these dumb ideas, and become atheists. And okay, that's been going on for a couple decades now. How's that turning out? It doesn't seem to be working in the way you thought. And so, like, what I'm wondering is, like, what are atheists going to do now? Like, you can't keep saying. Now you sound like idiots if you're like, oh, if we just turn away from religion, then everything will become great, and we'll get the scientific utopia. You were saying that like 20 years ago. You can't say that with a straight face anymore. So I'm really interested in where do people in the new atheist camp? Because again, you've had atheists who are like, as long as people aren't trying to harm me or something like that, I don't really care what you believe. If you want to believe in that, I don't care. Just as long as you're not doing something bad to me, I don't really care. But the new atheists, no, it's harmful in general, and we got to get rid of it so that we can have, so that society can progress. Okay, you had millions of people become atheists. How did that improve the world? How did that fix anything? Because it looks like everything's going completely insane right now. So now that that's becoming more glaringly obvious, what do you do? Do you change your course? Do you keep thumping your chest saying, no, we need even more atheism. If we just get more, then it will fix.
Yeah. And atheist birth rates are very, very low. So how are they going to produce a replacement atheist population in Europe? Well, they can't. That's why they're relying on so much on immigration. And what will replace that culture in a few generations? Yeah, good luck with that.
Yep, that's the other side. People can have an idea that ultimately destroys themselves. In other words, guys, you can have a position like atheism, and so atheists have the lowest birth rates. Have the lowest birth rates, and so hey, we're atheists. And we're gonna do this, and we're gonna have the lowest birth rates of any group. Okay, so your birth rates are so low that you cannot replace the current population. In other words, you need more people, or you don't have enough people to replace the people who are dying off. What do? Your government will take care of that. Your government will make sure there's enough people coming in. They will bring them from the Muslim world. And so you're saying, hey, let's do this, and you're ultimately destroying yourself. You have no solution. In other words, before you're going to tell everyone that we need to go with your plan, you should at least have a clue what you're doing and know what you're doing and know how you're actually going to make this work in the world. Doesn't seem like you have any clue what you're doing. And so the idea here is, before running around saying this is what will fix the world, I'm not even talking about if you're being an atheist. Guys, that's a completely separate issue. The world needs to become atheist. And you have no clue how to actually make that work or make it a better world. And you have no idea how to actually do that without destroying yourself. Because look at what's going on in the UK right now. You're destroying yourselves. The Dawkins crowd is completely destroying itself.
Yeah.
And you seem completely incapable of correcting course, contrary to what Bill Maher is saying. Oh, we just course correct. Hey, you're doing a bang-up job of it. Last one here. Young Clint Eastwood plus DiCaprio equals IP. God bless. So you're a young actually, I can see that a little bit. I see that. Young Clint Eastwood and DiCaprio. All right.
Appreciate
All right,
it.
everyone. Glad we can do that. And AP, I mean IP. I'm used to saying AP here. IP, I stuck a video in the description box. His video, How Christianity Changed the World. He said he's going to be coming up with lots more videos along these topics. Definitely want to check that out. And guys, you need to learn it. The new atheism is similar to Dawa in the sense that when a Dawa guy comes into an area and says, oh, there's the scientific miracles of the Quran and the Quran's been perfectly preserved. If he's speaking in an atmosphere of ignorance, you can get away with a lot of nonsense. And the only way to deal with the nonsense is to do away with the atmosphere of ignorance. In other words, to learn something about the topics these guys are talking about, then you can respond to them. Guess what? It's the same thing with the Bill Maher type crowd. Did you know there were only 24 people who were against slavery in the entire United States? It would take you literally 90 seconds to look that up and refute it. And people don't. They just let people keep spouting nonsense, and then the nonsense circulates and so on. It's very similar in the sense of you can make a claim like that. If you're talking to a bunch of people who just accept what you say and don't look it up, then you can kind of get away with it. But think about this, guys. These are actually, as disheartening as it is to see people spouting nonsense and getting away with it, these are actually perfect opportunities. So you take something that Bill Maher says, and you even say it in the chat or something like this. You actually go look it up, and you're like, hey, Bill Maher said this. I looked it up, and you can make a video about this. You take a little clip of what Bill Maher just said, and you actually do some of the research, which doesn't take long. You say, here's what he said. Here's why he's factually wrong. And then you put it out there. Hey, why does Bill Maher, who claims to be, claims to want to really spread the truth and so on, and to undermine harmful ideas, why is he spouting complete nonsense and doesn't seem to care? You call them out on it. If you call them out enough, then eventually people become a bit more careful in what they're saying. But what's that mean? It means we've all got work to do. We've all got work to do. Not just IP. Everyone out there has got work to do. All right, guys. Thanks, IP. If you're not following IP's channel, definitely want to go there. He's got endless array of good content. Anything coming out in the very near future, IP?
I'm going to be doing a video next called John, an Eyewitness Account, where I'm going to argue the Gospel of John as an eyewitness account. It should be out in 2 or 3 weeks. But everyone watching after the stream, go down and click on the link below that video, How Christianity Changed the World. A lot of good stuff in there you can use, I promise you. A lot of good studies. So yeah, that's what I got coming up on my channel, though.
And as I just laughed, are you saying that? Because we didn't watch the rest of this little discussion, but Bill Maher started going off, and John, the Gospel of John's written in the 2nd century. Oh, and God. Paul is the earliest guy, and he doesn't even believe Jesus was an actual person. He believes it's some heavenly thing. And it's like, dude, have you ever read a book in your life that was not written by a complete lunatic? You don't. What scholar believes this Jesus myth? My goodness. I mean, at least, even if you don't want to believe us, Bill, at least get Bart Ehrman or something on there to expose that complete nonsense, because Ehrman would be all over that. All right, guys. Catch y'all next time.